reminder of a great story of Rumi. And it's a story about that king who ruled over a vast kingdom. He was kind and benevolent, and he and his family, and indeed all of his court, followed the Sufi way. But one night, the king, during sleep, had a dream that his only and beloved son died. And when the king awoke, he was in a state of great anxiety and fear. What would happen to his kingdom? So long nurturing it to this place of prosperity, and now his son not having an heir, what would happen to their lineage? And his mind ran riot with this fear, which brought him to the place where he took the action that he wanted immediately to find a bride for his son, so that a progeny could be produced. The search was initiated, and finally a suitable princess was found. She was gentle and kind and of the same persuasion as the king and his family. So the wedding arrangements were set in train. But it so happened that in that city, in fact, living just outside the palace gates, was an old crone. Now, in her dotage, toothless, limp breasts drooping down, had fallen in love with the prince. On many occasions when he rode past on his horse, she would look lovingly at him with longing, even though she'd had many lovers in her life. She'd never known true love. And even at this age, the longing in her heart was so great. So when the prince rode by, she would put kohl around her eyes. She would dress herself in her faded silk garments and parade herself. But he never noticed her at all. But then her longing grew so great, and in her desperation, she decided she would seek the help of the devil himself. So, using the ways that come to those who have reached a great age, she indeed was able to bring herself into the presence of Satan himself. And she begged him to give her away, to have this prince for herself. Now, Satan laughed at her and said, at your age you should be seeking the spiritual way, not seeking a man to fulfill your desires. But she harangued this devil until finally he conceded, and he gave her a sachet of powder, which he said she should sprinkle on the prince as he passed. And so, that day, as it so happened, when the prince was riding to the kingdom where he would pick up his bride and bring her back to his own kingdom. So his mind distracted, thinking ahead, imagining what she would be like as he rode past on his horse. Our crone took the sachet of powder and threw it on him as he passed. Immediately he stopped his horse and, turning, looked at the most beautiful woman he had ever seen in all his life. He was totally and completely besotted with the old crone. He became her lover and her servant, washing her feet, serving her in every way. He was completely enamored with her, seeing in her the most beautiful woman he has ever imagined. Well, of course, he never made it to the kingdom where he would pick up his bride-to-be, and it was soon discovered by the king and all of what had happened to the prince. The king was beside himself. What could he do? His son was bewitched, a spell placed upon him. All kinds of soothsayers and magicians were bought, but to no avail. The king was at the state where he was almost tearing his hair. What could he do? But then, suddenly, in a moment, the king had a realization, and he fell to his knees, placing his head on the floor. And just in that instant, the king became aware of a great force coming towards him. And when he looked, it was an enormous cloud that came closer and closer, until in an instant the king knew what he must do. And so he did. And the spell on the prince was broken. In an instant, the eyes of the prince were opened, and he saw the old woman for what she was, an ancient hag. But also, in that moment, a great wave of compassion came over the prince, and as it did, the old woman felt herself loved in ways that she had never experienced before. At last, embraced, fulfilled, feeling loved. The prince returned to his father, the king, and drawing his sword, he said to his father, "Father, I have erred. Please take this sword and kill me. I am not worthy to be your son and heir." But the king, with tears flowing down his cheeks, said to his son, "No, my son, it is I who have erred, and beg your forgiveness." Needless to say, the prince did indeed go to the kingdom where he claimed his bride, and a son and heir was produced in due time, ensuring the progress of that kingdom. The question that can be asked from this is, what is this power that is present when we're brought to our knees with our head on the ground? What is it that becomes present for us in that state? What's your experience of this? We know it well. How many times have we been brought to our knees, feeling hopeless, bereft, full of anxiety and fear, bringing us to our knees? What's your experience? What is it that's there? Can we be in that state always? Yes, we can. Yes, we can. Can we forever be in that state of being on our knees? Yes, we can. But how many times do we have to find ourselves there before we recognize this? That this is the state of life, unchanging.
I think it's sort of like an acceptance or a forgiveness along those lines anyway, I would think. A sense of letting go.
Yes. Can we live like that in the moment? Yes, we can.
Yeah, we can.
But what does it really mean to be on our knees? Is it a humility? Is it a humbleness?
I guess it's a realisation that we're not it really.
Yes.
It's to surrender to
This-
whatever's in our faces.
The state of surrender, Totally, every moment. And what does that denote? Openness, receptivity, emptiness.
It allows grace to enter.
That's right. Absolutely. So what is this grace? What is this power that's there in that state?
It's like doing without doing again, isn't it?
Yes. Brings a knowing what to do without question and without doubt and without argument and debate.
I guess it brings an awareness because you're no longer in it, so you can see it from a different perspective in that sense. So you're not seeing it from your vested interests.
No, I don't. Rumi sees it as that cloud that enters. That's what we see it as.